March 2026. A team of archaeologists at Tel Azekah published findings that broke the internet for all the wrong reasons. The headlines said Molech sacrifice. Social media went wild. But here's what actually happened. Forensic analysis found no evidence of trauma, no burning, nothing that matched ancient sacrifice. What they found was a communal burial from the Persian period, the 500 years after Babylon, when the prophets stopped speaking. And that silence? It's where the Bible we read was born. I'm going to show you what's in that cistern. We'll look at the forensic evidence, the archaeological context, and what it tells us about a period most people skip right over. 500 years between Malachi and Matthew. No prophetic voices, no miracles on record. And somehow, during that silence, a scattered people kept their faith, preserved their texts, and shaped the scriptures we hold today. If you followed the news cycle on this one, here's what the paper actually shows. And it's not what the headlines said. The stakes aren't small. If the headlines were right, this would rewrite what we thought we knew about child sacrifice in ancient Israel. But they weren't right. The evidence points somewhere else entirely, somewhere more human, more heartbreaking, and, in its own way, more remarkable. Tel Azekah sits about 30 kilometers southwest of Jerusalem, on a ridge overlooking the Shephelah, the lowland hills that sit between the coastal plain and the Judean highlands. It's the kind of terrain that forced armies to slow down, to find footholds in limestone. A joint expedition from Tel Aviv University and Heidelberg University ran excavations at the site between 2012 and 2013, part of a long-term effort to map a site that had been referenced in ancient texts for centuries, but never fully excavated. One of the features they uncovered was a rock-cut cistern, and inside that cistern, they found the remains of 68 to 89 individuals. Roughly 90% were under the age of 5, about 70% were under the age of 2. Those numbers didn't arrive as abstractions. Every one of those individuals had a body small enough to fit in your arms. The lead archaeologists, Oded Lipschitz and Hila May, published their findings in the Palestine Exploration Quarterly in March 2026. The paper's DOI is in the description below. The excavation reports are available at azekah.org. This isn't hidden scholarship. It's public, peer-reviewed, and verifiable by anyone who wants to look. So why did the headlines jump to Molech? On the surface, the pieces seemed to fit. Ancient Canaanite site, dozens of infant remains, biblical associations with child sacrifice. The internet connected dots that weren't there. Molech worship gets mentioned in Leviticus, in Kings, in Jeremiah. There's a cultural memory of something terrible that happened at a place called Topheth. And here was a cistern full of children's bones at a site with a biblical name. The pieces seemed to fit. But 4 things were missing. No cut marks on any of the bones. In cases of ancient sacrifice, forensic archaeologists typically find evidence of perimortem trauma, cuts, fractures, damage consistent with violence. The Azekah remains showed none of that. The bones were intact. Whatever happened to these children, it wasn't violent death. No burning. Molech worship, as described in biblical and extra-biblical sources, involved fire. The Topheth sites in North Africa, places where scholars continue to debate whether we're looking at child sacrifice or perinatal cemeteries, show a very different forensic fingerprint from Azekah, including assemblages with cremated remains. The Azekah remains? Unburned. Not a single individual showed heat damage. 4 forensic categories. What you're looking at as the absences pile up is not inconclusive data. It's a pattern. No trauma. Beyond cut marks and burning, archaeologists look for any sign of perimortem injury, broken ribs, skull fractures, evidence of struggle. The Azekah assemblage showed none of it. These weren't children who died by violence. They died of something else. And no single event deposit. If this were a massacre, a plague, a sudden catastrophe, you'd expect to find the remains deposited all at once, a single layer, a single moment frozen in time. But the cistern showed evidence of deposition over an extended period, possibly a century or more.
It's a
Children
pattern.
buried one by one, or a few at a time, across generations. The detail that stopped me when I first read the paper wasn't the count, it was the offerings. Small copper earrings, a jar, a handful of beads, things a family chose to leave. Those aren't the marks of disposal, they're the marks of grief. Someone placed those objects with those children. Someone cared enough to include something small and precious alongside the small body they were laying to rest. Those absences aren't silence. In forensic archaeology, those absences are evidence. They tell us what didn't happen. And what didn't happen rules out the headlines. So what did happen? Lipschitz and May proposed that the cistern served as a communal burial site for infants and young children, specifically those who hadn't yet reached what their society considered full personhood. Hila May put it this way: this burial custom is more a social question about their role in society and at what age someone was considered a full member of society. This sounds strange to modern ears, but it's well attested in the ancient world. Later Jewish tradition preserved a category for the child who hadn't been weaned, who hadn't been formally presented, who hadn't crossed a threshold the community recognized as entry into social life. Not lesser, different. We see traces of this in the Hebrew Bible itself. Genesis 21:8 describes Isaac's weaning feast, a celebration marking his entry into a new social status. In 1 Samuel, Hannah doesn't bring Samuel to the temple until after she's weaned him, saying she'll present him that he may appear in the presence of the Lord and there abide forever. Weaning wasn't just a biological milestone, it was a social one. Children who died before crossing that threshold may have been buried differently, not because they were less loved, but because they occupied a different category in the community's understanding of life and death. Now, another reading is possible. Maybe this was simply normal perinatal mortality pooled over a century. Infant death rates in the ancient world were staggering by modern standards. A community burying its youngest dead in a designated place over generations with small offerings of grief, that doesn't require any exotic explanation. It requires only time and loss. At least, that's one reading scholars draw from the evidence. We don't fully know why this specific cistern was chosen. The paper acknowledges that. The evidence constrains interpretation. It doesn't eliminate all ambiguity. But what the evidence does eliminate is the headline. This wasn't Molech. This wasn't sacrifice. This was a community burying its children with care, across decades or centuries, in a place set apart for that purpose. The grave goods tell that story. You don't leave earrings with something you're disposing of. You leave them with someone you're mourning. I want to pause here. These were children, families, a century of loss gathered in one place. Whatever else we learn from this site, whatever scholarly debates unfold, that fact deserves to sit for a moment. 68 to 89 small lives, none of them reaching adulthood. Behind every set of remains is a mother, a father, a household that carried on after. This is human history at its most ordinary and its most painful. Let me know in the comments what strikes you about this burial practice, especially in light of those Genesis and 1 Samuel passages about weaning and presentation. That ridge had been standing through more than one catastrophe before these families started carrying their children to the cistern. The people who buried their dead there weren't living in the middle of nothing. They were living in the middle of everything that had happened to that place for centuries. Joshua 10 describes Azekah as the site where the Israelites pursued the Amorite coalition after the Battle of Gibeon, a moment of early Israelite military expansion into a landscape they were still learning. 1 Samuel 17:1 places the Philistine camp between Soka and Azekah, the valley where the Bible places the David and Goliath story. The same ridge, the same view, more or less, across the Shephelah. 2 Chronicles 11:9 lists Azekah among the fortified cities built by Rehoboam after the kingdom split, a defensive network strung along this ridge system to protect what remained of Judah's western approaches. Jeremiah 34:7 names Azekah and Lachish as the last fortified cities of Judah still standing when Babylon came. And then there's Lachish, letter number 4. It's a potsherd, an ostracon, found at Lachish, dating to around 587 BCE, the final months before Jerusalem fell. The writer is a military officer. He's reporting to his commander, and he says this: "We are watching for the fire signals of Lachish, according to all the signs my Lord has given, for we cannot see the signals of Azekah." That's a real artifact. You can search Lachish letter in the British Museum's online collection. They have the full set digitized and accessible. And what the letter tells us is that by the time it was written, Azekah had already fallen. The signals had gone dark. The officer at his post was watching for Lachish because Azekah was already gone. Nehemiah 11:30 mentions Azekah again, this time as a place where returnees from the Babylonian exile resettled during the Persian period. The same ridge, the same site, but a different people now, survivors of catastrophe, rebuilding in a land that had been emptied. When I first started reading through the dig reports, I kept coming back to where this cistern sits in that sequence. You stand on that ridge, and you're looking at 3 stories at once. The Valley of the Philistine encounter, the last signal fire before Babylon, the quiet Persian-era community that came after. They're all there, layered on top of each other. The cistern belongs to that 3rd layer, the Persian period, roughly the 5th and 4th centuries BCE, following the return from exile. It's a period most people skip. There's no dramatic narrative, no prophets thundering judgment, no miracles recorded. Just a small community living under imperial rule, keeping faith in ways that didn't make the headlines. But those 500 years are when the Bible took shape. Most biblical scholars date the final editing and compilation of the Torah to this window. The evidence is circumstantial but substantial. Nehemiah 8 describes Ezra reading the Torah publicly to the returned community around 444 BCE. That's the first recorded instance of the text being treated as canonical scripture read to an assembly, not just studied privately, but gathered around. The Elephantine papyri, discovered in Egypt, show a 5th century Jewish community that knew some biblical laws, but not others. At least, that's one reading scholars draw from the correspondence, though the implications are debated. The letters themselves are remarkable. A Jewish garrison community in Upper Egypt, writing in 407 BCE to the Persian governor of Judah and to the sons of the high priest in Jerusalem, asking permission to rebuild their temple, because they had one in Egypt. While the Torah was still being compiled in Jerusalem. I've read those letters more than once, and I'm still not sure I have a clean sense of what Jewish religious life looked like in that moment, which is probably the honest answer. Not all scholars agree. And Israel Finkelstein and others place the key editorial moments earlier. But the mainstream view points to this window. The synagogue, as an institution, has its roots here too. We don't have archaeological evidence of synagogue buildings until the 3rd century BCE, but the practice of communal Torah reading almost certainly began in the Persian period. Not buildings, roots. Do you see it? 5 centuries of history on one ridge. Joshua's pursuit in the lowland valley, the David and Goliath encounter in the Shephelah below, Rehoboam's fortifications above, and then Jeremiah's last outpost going dark while the Babylonians moved through. The officer watching for signals that never came. And then, after the smoke cleared, a quiet community burying its children in a cistern, reading scrolls that were still being shaped, keeping faith without prophets. The cistern is part of that continuity, not separate from it. These were the people who preserved the texts, the ones who copied, edited, transmitted. They didn't have Malachi's fire or Ezekiel's visions. They had a stone cistern where they buried their children, a ridge where their ancestors had watched for Lachish's signals, and scrolls they were still shaping into what we now call the Hebrew Bible. And they kept going. 500 years, no prophets. They kept being a people. I think about that stone cistern, same ridge where the signal fires went dark, same site where the returnees resettled. A community that had lost everything, temple, kingdom, prophetic voice, still burying its children with copper earrings and small jars, still copying scrolls, still gathering to hear the words read aloud. They didn't know we'd be reading their work 2,000 years later. They just kept going.
On a ridge,
that's what faithfulness looked like in the 500 years of silence. Not miracles, not visions, just people doing the ordinary work of memory and grief and hope on a ridge overlooking the Shephelah. The stone cistern is still there. The scrolls became the Bible. And the people who did that work, whose names we'll never know, whose children fill that cistern, they're the reason we're still having this conversation. If you want to go deeper into what happens when archaeology intersects with the biblical narrative, specifically the kind of artifact that can confirm a historical person named in the Bible, the Tel Dan Stela video is worth your time. It gets at something the Azekah story raises, but doesn't resolve: the line between what inscriptions prove and what they suggest. The Azekah paper itself is available at the DOI linked in the description, and the full excavation records are at azekah.org. The Lachish letters are in the British Museum's online collection, worth reading even in translation. Blessings to you and your family.